Why would we even want to do a cleanse? Why would we do anything like what I'm proposing to you now? And this is because we live in this crazy Vata deranged world that really pushes us towards unhealthy levels of stress, unhealthy levels of toxicity. We are not taking time to eat properly. We're not taking time to rest and exercise properly. We're not even taking time for our relationships, and including our relationship with ourselves. And because this life is so fast paced now, and because especially if we're living in an urban environment, it's so intense, it's really very difficult to change habits and lifestyles on our own. And so we need a kind of a structure that helps us to do that. It helps us to kind of find our place and sort of calibrate, as it were, and to be able to reconstitute ourselves over whether it be 4 weeks or just the 2 weeks. And in Ayurveda, it's understood that there are three main causes of disease. And this is what you'll see very clearly when you understand. These are, by the way, thousands of years old, these ideas. And these causes of disease are written in texts like the Charaka Samhita, which is 3,500 years old in written form. And they were known well before this. And so you'll see that humanity has not changed very much. It's just, I think, perhaps we're in a more intense version of life, but we still have these human tendencies, and it's Ayurveda's understanding that we are causing ourselves disease because of these human tendencies. So let's have a look. The first one is acting against wisdom and common sense. In Sanskrit, there's this wonderful word, which is prajnaparada, which is literally a crime against wisdom. It's a great concept to remember because, and we all know this, of course, because when we do something that we know is not healthy for us, we still expect a positive result. We still expect a good result. So we might have really bad habits, day-to-day habits, or we might eat things that we know are not really healthy for us. Or perhaps it's in the way that we do things, rushing around and, for example, not going to the toilet in time. Even Ayurveda will talk about not sneezing or not coughing when the body needs to do so. And all of that suppression is actually causing an increase of Vata. You'll see very shortly how important Vata is to the beginning of disease. The second cause is an unhealthy relationship of our senses, the sight, the smell, etc., and that unhealthy relationship of the senses to the sense objects. So, for example, our sense of taste and food. We eat to have something that tastes really good, rather than eating because we know something's healthy. We might actually find that the food that we're eating is really tasty, but causing us illness. So that's not a healthy relationship. Or, for example, drinking too much wine or beer or Coca-Cola or whatever, or too much chocolate, maybe too many chips and all kinds of processed food. Whatever it is, we have perhaps a taste for too much sweet or too much salty, usually, or perhaps too much sour, typically. And then that throws us off balance. And then with the eyes, for example, if we're on computers all day long, and I'm sorry I'm keeping you here, telling you not to do it, but here we are. If you're too much on screens, if you're too much in a space where you're not seeing bright daylight and you're not enjoying a good vision of, say, distance and sky and forest and so on, your eyes become really sore, and this causes imbalance as well. And those imbalances are not just at the level of the sight or the eyes, but they go deeper into our neurological system. And then the third cause of disease is an improper adaptation to seasonal changes. And this is why we do these cleanses at what are known as these sandhya moments, these moments of change, the joining between the seasons. Whether that be, for example, in the Northern Hemisphere, we're moving out of the summer season and into the autumn season. In India, for example, moving out of the rainy season and moving away from the wet and damp and towards the dry and warm weather. which eventually gets cooler even in India. It's all relative. And when we don't adapt to those changes, however subtle they might be, we also suffer. And therefore, the modern life that we have, which is all about air conditioning and about eating strawberries in January and about doing whatever it is that we feel like doing in the moment that we're doing it, is actually a massive source of imbalance for us and therefore disease. And we see it pretty easily in society around us. We can see how people are becoming really unwell. Ayurveda says if the diet is wrong, medicine is useless. And if the diet is right, then medicine is unnecessary. And this is where food comes in. So food is extremely important in Ayurveda. The home cleanse, I would say, is probably 60% based on food. And the rest is based on guidelines that are to do with wisdom around your daily habit. We're going to look also at meditation, yoga, and all these things that will support us in our good health. But fundamentally, if the food is wrong, nothing that you do is going to actually help you. So taking all these pills as we do in the West to try and heal disease is not really working. And in fact, in many cases, actually is actively hurting people. There are hundreds of thousands of people only in the United States alone every single year who die having taken their prescriptive medicines according to their doctor's orders. So the medicine is adding to a problem that is already there. It's not helping us at all. And so we want to get really, really basic. We want to strip right back to the bare bones. And we do simplify quite a lot in the first few days of the cleanse. We go right back to understanding the basics of what we need, what we must eat, for example, and how we should be doing that before we carry on into the cleanse. So in our modern life, our everyday choices throw us off balance. It's these little things that accumulate. Sometimes you hear people say, I caught a cold, or he got cancer out of the blue. He got a cancer diagnosis, or he just dropped dead from a heart attack. He didn't know he had any problems. And this cannot be possible. If we're paying attention to our health, if we're paying attention to our body, we can really sense what's happening in every step along the way. So one of the things that we're going to look at is these little everyday choices that we make, as well as including becoming more intuitive, becoming much more sensitive to what we need in our bodies and in our health to actually support ourselves long term. So these little choices, let's call them social pressures, let's say, or maybe obligations according to how we need to live our lives with children, maybe work obligations and so on, are going to affect us in such a way that it causes a toxicity in the body. And this is what in Ayurveda is known as ama. Ama is a way of describing whatever is left undigested. It's what the body can't use. And that also includes what the mind can't use, what our heart cannot process. And so that information overload or emotional overload also causes ama in the body. And although it starts at a subtle level, on the emotional level, for example, it ends up in a gross level, and then the body can actually respond. So, for example, if we take deep grief and loss, that overload of emotion that might be blocked then and is not being healed will slowly have consequences on the heart. And the heart stops functioning properly. Our circulation doesn't work properly. The arteries might start to atrophy or become clogged. Our digestion doesn't work anymore. And this is what leads to heart disease. But the original cause may have been emotional. So this ama, this toxicity, clogs up the body. It stops things from moving through the body in the way that they need to, so that we can assimilate our nutrition, so that we can use our energy, which we have in abundance. And it also blocks information in the form of hormones, for example. Our body, of course, needs that circulation to thrive. And an example of ama being created is eating while standing, something so simple as that, or eating too fast and not chewing properly causes ama. Because when we stand to eat, our stomach is stressed, our digestive system is stressed and prepared for action. It's not prepared to receive food and assimilate the nutrition. And if we're eating fast and not chewing properly, then the process of digestion, which should begin in the mouth, is left up to the stomach. And if there's too much food going in and the digestive capacity is low, then the food just sits there and we won't be able to assimilate it. And so digestion slows down, toxicity increases, and it builds up over time. Ama also builds up by having too much stress and not sleeping well. And ama can even accumulate by not moving around enough, by sleeping too much. So there's all kinds of different ways for these toxic waste to accumulate. And we want to find out what is the root cause, what's the reason behind any toxicity that you might be carrying or that anyone you know might be carrying. Most of the time, it is just related to these little choices, what we consider to be unimportant. If you were to say to a Western doctor that eating and working at your computer or eating well, running from the car to an appointment is problematic, most of them would consider that to be minor. And only a few who might be aware of the degree of stress response in the body might consider that to be problematic and might say, no, you really must calm down and eat in a quiet space that is pleasant and enjoy your food so that your body can take it in. But unfortunately, we don't usually get this kind of advice, even though eating in stress like that overstimulates the sympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. It's where we have an enormous amount of energy to save ourselves in case we're in danger. But our nervous system can't tell the difference between standing up and eating or eating and walking, for example, and a genuine threat to our life. So we want to eat when we're engaging the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what happens when we can sit down and relax, not talk so much while we eat, chew our food, digest slowly, perhaps listen to nice music, and do something that actually supports that whole process.